friends, my name is Tash. Welcome back to my channel. I've been a reader for pretty much my entire life, but sometimes I do think about how my reading taste has changed throughout the years, and thanks to wonderful reading tracker websites and apps, I can actually look at what I was reading over a decade ago. So that's what we're going to do with this video. I'm going to be looking back at the books that I was reading from about 2013 to 2020, just before I started my Bookstagram account, and just talk about how my reading has changed since then. So if you're interested, stick along for the ride. Starting with 2013, when I looked like this, thought bright coloured jeans were the pinnacle of fashion, and I was 14 years old. Now, the first book I ever have tracked is Insurgent by Veronica Roth, which kind of implies that I also read Divergent by Veronica Roth. And I gave it 2 stars, and it seems like even back then I did not care for this series at all. I feel like I gave Divergent 4 stars, but I remember Insurgent just not doing it for me at all. I really didn't enjoy it. People say it's a poor man's Hunger Games, and I kind of still feel that way about it now. I would never read these books again, honestly. Around 2013, I was also reading The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. Now, I was a Shadowhunters girly. I was obsessed with Alec and Magnus. If they had no fans, I was deceased. I loved these books. They were so trashy. I don't know if that's like a bad word to describe it, but they were just so much fun. They were so fast paced. I remember asking my stepdad at the time to just like buy me the whole series, and like waiting with bated breath for City of Heavenly Fire. That series, even though I would probably not read it again, I don't think it's my kind of thing anymore. I definitely have a lot of nostalgia for it. Back in the day, Shadowhunters was for me. I was also reading Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. Maybe you're kind of sensing a theme. I feel like I read The Hunger Games and then decided that I needed to read anything that was for fans of The Hunger Games. And I just know that 14-year-old me thought this book was like the pinnacle of social commentary, and I know that I thought those hoverboards were the coolest thing known to man, and I just don't see myself ever really rereading them. I don't even really think about Uglies anymore. And the last book I have is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, which, as you can see, is probably the first book / series that I'm actually still interested in. Again, I feel like I have memories of like whipping out a Game of Thrones in English and like basking in all the people looking at me thinking, oh my god, she's reading like such an adult grown-up book, when I probably didn't understand half of what was happening. I think I watched the TV show and my dad had read the books, and I kind of wanted to like be in the know and be like in the cool kids club. I don't think 14-year-old me probably should have been reading Game of Thrones, but here we are. I'm kind of in the process of starting to try and reread them. I've already read a Game of Thrones last year, I think, so here they all are. Will the series be finished? Who knows, but this is about where we were at with the series when I was 14, and we're still here. No Winds of Winter. Sadly, I don't have anything tracked for 2014. I don't know if I just forgot Goodreads existed or what, but we'll skip straight to 2015 when I was 16 years old, just about finishing secondary school, and this is what it looked like. Now, I only have one book tracked for 2015, and that is Paper Towns by John Green. Now, something to know about me is that when I was a teenager, I was quite the contrarian. I was, and it pains me to say, not like other girls. I know it's so cringe and disgusting and horrible, and I promise I'm not like that anymore, but I definitely did take a lot of pleasure in just shitting on things that other people really liked, especially girls my own age. And John Green was one of those things. I had read The Fault in Our Stars. It was fine. But as much as I was such a contrarian. I stand by the fact that Paper Towns was not a good book. It just wasn't. And I wholeheartedly say that with my full chest. Not a good book at all. So yes, I was one of those girls that would just dislike things because I thought it made me cool to dislike things that people liked, but Paper Towns, definitely not a good book for me. Then we get to 2016. Now I'm in college and I think I'm super artsy with my black and white photos. And this was a big year for me in terms of reading. This is when I discovered quite a few of my all-time faves, things that I've carried with me through so many years. So one of the first ones of that was Girl Up by Laura Bates, and I have been a Laura Bates girly ever since then. Ever since I picked up this book that had dancing vulvas on the end pages, I knew it was for me. I've moved away from my cringy, not like other girls crap, and I've moved into my feminist era, of which I am still in, and hopefully will stay in for the rest of my life. I also discovered Holly Bourne around this time. And again, anyone who knows me knows that Holly Bourne is my all-time favourite author of all time, forever and always. I love her. And that all started back in 2016. How crazy is that? Also read The Queen of the Tearling for the first time, which you can see just behind me. This, let me just get it out. This is my original copy of The Queen of the Tearling. It's like battered. I mean, to be fair, it's actually quite in quite good condition. It's a little bit sort of sun damaged. It's not as bad as The Invasion of the Tearling. Oh my god, why can't I get it? Which is lovely and like a peachy kind of colour on the front, and then you turn it to the side and it's just like completely yellow. Look at the picture, it's so bad. The sun damage on that one is strong. So I read that for the first time, loved it. I think that was actually a recommendation from sort of early booktube, The Queen of the Tearling. I want to say people like Peruse Project were sort of talking about it, and this is sort of around the time I started to get a little bit influenced by what people were reading on the internet. Not majorly, but a little bit. I also read the Infernal Devices series, also by Cassandra Clare, and this is where I stopped with the Shadowhunter Chronicles, because I actually did end up buying the first, I don't know if anyone else in the UK knows what I'm talking about, but when the Dark Artificers came out, they were in these like giant, thick, chunky editions. They were like bigger than a standard size paperback, but they were still a paperback. And I don't know why they did it like that. But I did buy the first two books, but I'd never read them. I just kind of lost interest after, you know, City of Heavenly Fire and the Infernal Devices series. It just never really called to me. And then it's been so long now that I'm not really that interested in like urban fantasy anymore, nor am I willing to commit to so many books in a genre that I'm not really that interested in. But 2016 wasn't all good books, because I was forced to read Mrs. Dalloway for English literature, and it is the single most boring book I have ever read. I loved English lit all throughout secondary school and college, but oh my god, Mrs. Dalloway, I did not need to read a whole book about a woman planning a party. I just didn't need to read it. I hated it. So much so that I decided that I needed the world to know that by tracking it on Goodreads. So I also read a book called Extraordinary Means by Robin Schneider, which to me was to The Fault in Our Stars what Divergent was to The Hunger Games. Like the worst kind of sick lit I've ever read. It was just really gross, really cringe, didn't like it. And I also read If I Stay by Gail Forman, which I also really, really did not like. And I actually have a review of from back in the day, so I shall read that to you now. 2.5 out of 5 stars. I really don't get the hype about this book. To me, Mia's voice was flat and at times boring. It took a long while for me to feel like she actually cared about the death of her parents, and it was only when she realised that Teddy had died that any kind of response was given. To me, this book wasn't as much about the decision between life and death and what both choices could mean for everyone. It was more of a fancy way of telling a rather shapeless and boring love story. I didn't enjoy Adam's character. I don't quite know why. I just didn't find him romantic or appealing. In its favour, the book did create a lovely family unit, and I could feel the closeness of them during the flashbacks. I did find her parents to be quite cliched though. The one thing that really got me was the grandfather. It was the only time my eyes started to tear up a bit. He seemed to be the only character who actually understood the concept of the book, and that scene was probably the best. Overall, I didn't hate it, but it isn't something I shall be reading a second time, nor do I care enough about any of the characters, besides good old Gramps, to read the sequel. Scathing. Oh my god. She's a critic, everyone. She is a literary critic. But one thing I missed off of that review is a scene that has lived in my mind rent-free ever since I read this book, and that is where she plays his body like a cello. No. Horrendous. Absolutely foul. No. The fact that I still remember that scene, even though I remember literally nothing about this book, makes me upset. It genuinely upsets me. This camera needs to come down. That's better. Now we're in 2017, my last year at home before going away to university, and quite a few books to talk about, so let's just go through some of them. I read It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. This was probably the single worst representation of mental illness that I have ever read. Borderline offensive, actually. Really did not like this one. I also read Only Ever Yours and Asking for You by Louise O'Neill, which again is an author that I still read from to this day, and I love her and I love her books. I read The Handmaid's Tale. I don't even know if my old personal Instagram is still up and running these days. I haven't logged into it for like 5 years, but I remember that I posted like this really cool grown-up picture of me in the bath, you know, tasteful, can't see anything, but I'm like reading The Handmaid's Tale in the bath, and I have a glass of cider just sitting on the edge of the bath, like I'm so cool and grown up and look at me. But I still have that exact copy of The Handmaid's Tale on my shelf to this day, so obviously I loved it. I read Before I Go to Sleep. I think that was a book I saw on TV and thought it sounded really interesting, so just decided to pick it up and give it a go. It was fine. One of Us is Lying, which was fine as well. You can kind of see that I'm just kind of picking up anything that I hear about or sounds interesting and not really loving anything. So that's kind of what this era of my reading was all about. But I did read They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, and I did really enjoy that. So kind of getting there. Welcome to 2018, my first year at uni, and where my mental health problems were not very good. So hopefully I read some books that made me very happy. This was the year that I discovered Eleanor Oliphant for the first time, so definitely a plus, as I've mentioned in 2 of the 4 videos I've already posted. My favourite book of all time, and that is all I will say on the matter. I read To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which I enjoyed, thought was fine. I read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue for the first time, which I loved. I love that series so much. I discovered the Bone Season series by Samantha Shannon. I think that was a recommendation from Carrie Hope Fletcher when she was doing very early on in her YouTube career, when she was sort of talking about books a little bit, as well as just sort of generally vlogging her life. So thank you for that, because again, one of my favorite series of all time. And 2018 was when I finally started to finish the Queen of the Tealing series. So overall, a pretty damn good year for me, 2018 in terms of reading. 2019, second year of uni, happily in a relationship that I'm still in now. And I'm gonna have to start rapid firing some of these because there are just too many for me to talk about individually. Please excuse the light on my face because I will be reading off of my handy dandy iPad. Every Heart a Doorway, Call Me By Your Name, History Is All You Left Me, Warbreaker, Uprooted, The Court of Thorns and Roses, Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, The Bells, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Vicious, The Lunar Chronicles, The Illuminae Files, What If It's Us, My Sister the Serial Killer, The Night Circus, A Darker Shade of Magic, The Goldfinch, This Is How You Lose the Time War, and Red, White and Royal Blue. You can kind of see the internet influence here. I was definitely a big booktube watcher back in these times. So I was just listening to anyone and everyone, and I found a lot of books that I loved and a lot of books that I didn't love quite so much from this time. Then 2020 happened, the pandemic, surviving through that, and I was reading pretty much anything I could get my hands on, including starting the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski, Almost Love by Louise O'Neill. I read Red Rising, which I still haven't continued to this day. Only Mostly Devastated, which for some reason is one of my biggest comfort reads. I have no idea why. House of Salt and Sorrows, Middle Game by Seanan Maguire, because I was such a huge fan of the Wayward Children series. I thought I'd try some of her other stuff. I read the Arc of the Scythe series by Neil Shusterman, which I loved so much. The Hate You Give, Wilder Girls by Rory Power, The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, which I didn't really like that much. To Kill a Kingdom. I also read Throne of Glass at this time. Not one of my faves. The Astonishing Colour of After. I read a book called Hot Dog Girl, which I'm fairly sure was about a girl working in like a carnival or something, but apparently I only gave it 3 stars. Yeah, a bit of an eclectic year for me. It's not really until sort of the last 4 years or so that I've really come into my own and am being a lot more selective with the books that I read. I kind of was just picking up anything that sounded vaguely interesting or that was vaguely popular, which led to not really the best results, to be honest. And then we get to 2021, where we settled into our new flat. I started my Bookstagram, and the rest, as they say, is history. I have read so many books since then that it would just take hours to go through them all. But I think these years in particular are the most interesting to me because I look back on them and I think, why did I read that? Why was I interested in that? Because there are so many books that I've read that I just wouldn't now. There are so many books that I gave like 2 stars or even 3 stars that I probably should have just DNF'd, to be honest. But if you're interested in sort of the more recent years of my reading, I would be more than happy to go through them in separate videos. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments. I've had a lot of fun revisiting my past years of reading. It's been just really interesting to look back and reminisce and have a bit of a laugh at myself for what books I thought sounded interesting to me. So I definitely encourage you to have a scroll back through your Goodreads or your Storygraph and just have a little giggle at books that you thought you'd be interested in back in the day and just definitely weren't. I'm so much more selective with my TBR and my reading nowadays. I am much more liberal with my DNFs. If something's not capturing me in the first sort of 30, 40 pages or so, instant DNF. I just don't have time for it anymore, and there are so many amazing books that I've heard about that I want to read, that I know that I'm gonna love, that I just don't have time to waste on 2, 3 3.5-star reads when I've got so many books that I could read and be thinking about for the rest of my life. I'm reading what I want to read and not just what is popular or what I think I should be reading. My reading space is definitely a lot more of a happy place for me now. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button, and if you want to see more videos from me, then make sure you press that subscribe button. I would really love to make it to 20 subscribers by the end of October, so if you want to be one of the first members of this little community, then make sure you go ahead and press that subscribe button today. I post videos every Wednesday, and I'm looking to fill the void in between with some reading vlogs that I'm working on at the moment, so stick around if you're interested in that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.